Alrighty. And screen sharing back in here. All right, Del, go ahead and take us away if you want to introduce yourself.
Okay, good morning. I am Delvin Glymph. I am one of 2 career counselors we have here at Pepperdine University. I will be discussing resume fundamentals and how to create your resume so that it stands out and that you can be seen by employers for jobs you're applying to. The beginning, as you can see, the road ahead. The 3 topics we're going to discuss today is the proper organization of your resume. We're going to discuss the structural elements as well as the compelling content. Each one of these sections serve a specific purpose in having your skills and abilities highlighted in your resume so that your resume is easily seen, easily understood, and observed by the people, the hiring managers or the HR departments of the companies you're trying to apply to. Okay, so we're going to go in first and discuss proper organization. The proper organization deals with a chronological resume. Ideally, you want your resume to be in reverse chronological order, which means your most recent relevant experience comes first. As you see in the bullet points, recent relevant means that the position that serves closest to the position you're applying to goes first.
So let's stop for a second.
Yes.
I think we might be having some audio difficulty. If you guys can type in if you can hear us, that would be helpful. Let's see here. So Suzanne can't hear us. Amy, can you hear us? Or Flora or Kevin? Okay, great. If any of you are having trouble hearing us, you might have to go into the audio component at the top and see if you can connect. So we're going to go ahead and keep going unless there's anybody else who can't hear. I'm going to let Del go ahead and take it away. Thank you, Flora. Alrighty.
Okay, so as I was saying, reverse chronological order, you want your most recent relevant experience first. Now, recent relevant speaks to the experience you had that relates to the position you're applying for. So let's say, for example, you're currently working as maybe a waiter at a restaurant, but you're applying for a position at a computer science. You're applying for a position at a computer science company. And at the same time, you're doing some volunteer work or some freelance work that deals with some computer science skills. You would want to put that freelance work before you would put the restaurant or waiter work, if that makes any sense. Next, we want to put the job titles and employers are emphasized to show progressive job history. You want to have the place you worked first on the first line, the location, and then the date you did it. Underneath that, you want to put the position title that you had. A lot of times, some of the experiences you may have, whether it be an internship or a job that you've had, the place you worked has a lot more weight than actually what you've done. If you worked at a place, let's say, in a huge company like Viacom, somewhere like that, that'll stand out to an employer because that is a prestigious and well-known company. Then they'll want to know what you did for them. The next one, skills and accomplishments, are listed in details. So you want to list the things that you've done. Like, for example, if you look over at the example, it says Office of Historical Records, Los Angeles, California, records clerk. And then the skills and accomplishments, develop and implement new procedures to compile and store personnel records. I'll get into specifically how you organize the details of your bullet points later on in this presentation. But ideally, your experience section should look like this, the reverse chronological order. We're going to move on to the next section, which deals with the structural elements. The first one we're going to talk about is the heading. Believe it or not, some people send resumes that do not have a heading on it, which is a little strange, but that's why we're here to help. Your heading should have all of your contact information. You definitely want to put your name, of course. You want to make sure it's a little bigger than everything else on your resume because that is the most important part of your resume, your name. You want to use proper capitalization and use a clear, common font. The font is very important depending on the industry you're going into. Some industries allow a little bit of creativity as far as the font and the design and the layout of your resume. Like if you're going into advertising or some sort of media or, creative type of industry, they allow a little more leeway as far as being creative with how you display your name and the fonts you use. Whereas if you're going into something like finance, where you have a very structured, or accounting, something like that, where a very structured field, they want you to, it's beneficial to have it in a very clear, like Times New Roman or a very standard font. So your heading, name, address, city, state, zip, and definite contact information. You want to have phone number and email address. Moving on next to the education. The education also goes in reverse chronological order. If you are a recent graduate, you definitely want to put the things you've done as far as, some of the skills, some of the activities you've done, some of the volunteer work you've done. If you've been out of school or out of formal education for about 5 years or so, that's not as important. But if you need that information to fill in space to create a full page, then definitely put that in. As it says above, include the school, location, degree, and major with completion date. As it says here, Pepperdine University, the city and the state, the date you completed, your major. If you have a minor, you put the minor. If your GPA, as I said, as a recent graduate, the GPA is more relevant than as a person, as I said, who have been out of school for about 5 years. I recommend if your GPA is above 3.4, then you put it. If not, then I would say don't. But it's done at your discretion. Also, if you've done study abroad, or maybe you have a teaching certificate, or you've done some sort of other certificate program or supplementary education, that goes as a separate educational experience. As you see here in the example, this is a study abroad experience. However, if you did a sort of an IT certificate program or some sort of other program that could supplement your education and shows that you have developed further skills professionally, you definitely put that in the education section. Now, a lot of times students and alumni ask if they should put the education first or further at the bottom. Now, that usually depends on when you graduated. As I said, if you are 2 to 3 years out of college, you would put your education first, because that more than likely has more relevance than a lot of the experiences that you've had, as for professional experiences that you've had. Now, if you are 3 to 5 years out of school, then I would recommend you put your experience above the education, because the experiences that you've had 3 to 5 years is more valuable than the fact that you do have a degree. Because based on the position you've had, it's understood that you do have a degree. Okay? Now, moving forward into the experience point. As I said before, you want to have reverse chronological order. You want to include the organization, location, and dates on the first line with the position just below. You want to have the experiences that are most, as I said before, relevant to the position you're applying to. And you want to cater your resume to the job description that you are applying to. Let's say, for example, the example here where you worked at the Office of Historical Records. If you're applying for a position doing something as far as that deals with some organizational type thing, then you want to highlight the things and the duties in your job that you've done that relate to your organizational ability, your ability to keep track of things and maintain databases and things of that nature. If you're applying for a different type of position that doesn't necessarily involve a whole lot of organization, but maybe collaboration, then you would want to put in your bullet points the things that you've done that deals with collaboration and coordinating and setting things up so that other people can come in and work alongside you in your position. As it says, you want to quantify as much as you can. Put the amounts of hours, numbers, students, percentages, anything that can show that your ability to work as far as quantitative information. Use action words and result-oriented content and specific language. Not only include the duties, but add accomplishments as well, which we're going to get into in the next section as we move forward. So these are the structural elements. You definitely want to have the heading, you want to have education, and you want to have experience. There's another section that I'll get into when we get near the end, which is the skills section, which goes into specific skills that you have that relate to the positions you're going to apply to. But these are the relative structural elements. So moving forward into the compelling content. This is the information in your bullet points that's going to help you stand out and display your specific skills and abilities within your resume. And this is the most important part. You want to have the action plus the accomplishment or the result. So you want to say what you did and what came out of what you did or what you were doing in the position that you had. And what does that look like? This looks like these examples that I have here. So the results that you achieve based on the actions you've taken or the action you took. So the example below, it says before assisted children with motor skills. So which is true. You could have, had a job where you assisted children who needed to develop their motor skills. But what you can do within that sentence or within that line is add a little bit more depth into your ability, your knowledge, your capabilities, and as well as what you've done. So after you take some time and you want to expand on what you've done, you say, planned and facilitated activities to build motor skills of 21 third grade students. So this sentence adds a whole lot more depth into your ability to work with students and work with kids. It not only says that you assisted them, but it shows that you have the ability to plan and organize a group, deliver information, and ensure that they receive that information. Now, all this information that I just stated can be gathered out of this one sentence. Saying that you worked with 21 third grade students also shows that you have a little bit of patience if you've dealt with kids before. It shows you have a little bit of patience that you could deal with a number of students, that amount of students within in a classroom setting and still be successful. If you look over at the example where it says experience, we have several different occupational experience. We have the office clerk, we have the educational center, we have the coffee bean, tea and leaf. And if you look at some of these bullet points, for example, if you look at the educational center and look at the second bullet point, it says led classroom activities to over 30 students in multiple conversational formats. So that shows that you can deliver lessons or activities to a group of people in multiple formats. And when an employer reads that, like I said, it adds depth into who you are and what you're able to do for your company, the skills that you have, your abilities. I'm going back over to the left side of the screen where it says the before taught a lesson on family trees, which is probably what the person did. But when you add more depth to it, it shows that you have a lot more knowledge and capabilities. So if you look at the after section, it says develop the family tree lesson, emphasizing cultural development and family history. So it shows that you can go into a lesson and dig more information out of whatever you're doing, that you have a depth to your knowledge and ability. And that is the compelling content. So these are the three main things that go into creating a resume. You want to have your resume organized, reverse chronological order, the most recent relevant first. You want to have your structural elements. You want to have your education, heading first, of course, education, and then your experiences. And then you want to have the content. You want to have within your experience the duties that you've done, your actions as well as the accomplishments to show what came out of the actions that you've done. And ultimately, you have your whole resume. Now, as I said before, there's another section at the bottom which highlights skills. A lot of times you apply for jobs that require specific computer programs, specific skills that you need to know. And this is where you would put those in the skills section. As you look at this, as you see, the education section is at the top, and this is a person who graduated in 2011, so they're about maybe 3 years out of school. So in this experience, you would put the education first, but as I said before, you would have the education at the bottom for a person who's been out of school maybe more than 4 or 5 years. The skills section can deal with computer, can deal with any type of language you may have, any type of supplementary certification you may have, and the specifics within that. But those are things you want to put into your resume so that the employer can see it. Now, ideally, you want to have your resume at least one full page. You don't want to leave too much white space on the paper. But if you have a lot of experience and you've had multiple jobs and multiple experiences that all relate to the position you're applying to, it is okay to have more than one page. But if it goes over to 2 pages, you want to make sure that they are full pages, because you don't want to have 1 page and a quarter, because then I would recommend you rework it to make it fit 1 page. If you have 1 page and 3/4, then I would say probably add some more bullet points of your duties as they relate to the position you're applying to, as well as maybe add some other experiences that go along with what you're trying to do. Okay. That's pretty much the gist of structuring your resume and having yourself, having it highlight your skills and abilities. Does anyone have any questions, or are there any questions that were asked regarding this webinar?
Let's see here. We're going to have to pop out of screen sharing mode, I think, to see the chat box.
Okay.
And we've got a small group, so fire away, guys, if you've got some questions for Del. Perfect. Now we can see both.
Let me add a couple of other things as well. When you look at this resume that's sitting here, let's see if we can make it bigger. Make it smaller. There we go. When you look at this resume, you see that in the education section that we have the honors and awards and activities and the relevant coursework. Now, if you were taking other classes, let's say, for example, you were going into computer science and you were taking classes like Python to learn Python computer language. That's computer language within computer science, if you guys don't know that. But if you were taking classes to learn how to use Python or learn to, code in Python format, those are things you would put in the relevant coursework because that highlights your abilities even further, and that shows the company that you are expanding your knowledge. Any professional development or classes or things you're doing like that, you definitely want to put in your resume. And you can put it under relevant coursework or supplementary educational progress or things like that. And as I said, you can be a little creative in how you, depending on the industry you're going into, you can be creative in how you do your format. This is a standard format that we use here in the Career Center for pretty much most of our majors. However, as I said, you can be a little more lenient in the creative fields. You can be a little more lenient. Okay, we now have a question. It says, what if you're working for many years? What is the maximum number of pages that one should have? As I said before, you want to highlight your skills and abilities. And typically, there was an article that came out, I believe, last year, and we were reading it within our office, and it said that HR employees spend about 8 seconds looking at your resume, which is the reason why you want to have the most recent relevant first. So if you have a lot of experience and it relates to the position, then I would say no more than 2. If it goes into 3, then as I said, you want to have it full pages, definitely full pages. But you want to highlight your skills and abilities that relate to the position, the ones that relate mostly first, so that they see them. And in this article, the article that I'm speaking about went around our office last year, and we were discussing that about how HR people look at resumes and they go over resumes and cover letters. And 8 seconds isn't a whole lot of time. So when you have your experiences, you want to put those up there. And if you have 3 to 4 pages, then 8 seconds, 4 pages, not so much. It doesn't translate as easily. And it also depends on the type of position you're applying for. Now, if you're applying for a position that's very high up, CEO position, you definitely want to have, your experiences put there. And typically, for positions such as those resumes do typically go 3 to 4 pages. Some of them might even be 5 because you would have a lot of experience. But typically, middle management to entry-level positions, you definitely want to have, I would say, no more than 2. Because you should be able to highlight your skills and abilities and qualifications for that position within your experience section within 2 pages. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anyone else have any more questions?
Another thing I just would love to draw your attention to is on our website. And Del, maybe we can scroll there and show them a little bit of we've got some example resumes. We've got an ultimate guide to resumes. There's just some other resources on there. We know this is just kind of a quick overview of what we've got just for you to focus on. But you do have time and resources here where you can look and find some examples. You can also contact our office if you'd like to have somebody go over a resume with you. So we do have these resources here, some of the examples that Del was referring to. So know that that's available to you. Were there any other questions from the group? Well, it looks like we don't. Del, you answered all their questions. Well, thank you for joining us today. Again, this webinar will be posted on our Career Services YouTube playlist under the Pepperdine channel. If you search on YouTube, you can find a list of short-form videos where we've got career-related content. We'll get it up there within 3 days. There will be a link on our website on the Alumni Career Services page. And thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for further career content. Hope you guys have a great day.